So we're back in Cyclekart HQ. We've come across a couple of problems. We're waiting for some tubing to go through there, so we can drill, put the tubing through, and then we can space out these so they're not crimping up, so we can put the tubing a little bit wider than the channel and centralise it. It'll give the steel a bit more strength where the shackle plate goes, and it will space them out. On the front, they come with these that I've tack welded in place. With what else have we got? We've got the rear axle here that's placed in position. Luckily, let's put this bearing on the end so you can see. And do things with one hand. I'll put the camera down. Okay, that's not going on. Need to clean up that end to get the bearing to go on. But the issue we've got here is it came with 3 hold flanges, and however I position it, the holes overhang the steel. So I'm going to have to come up with a different solution there. Either a 2-bolt surface mounted one, or flanges with only 2 stud holes in. We've got the rear brake off a Suzuki 600 that's going to go on there. That came off eBay with the master cylinder and reservoir. And luckily we moved these 2 chassis rails apart, so there's a foot between them, which has given us clearance on that was it 70 or 72 inch 70-inch drive sprocket. So if I had these plates, these rails in the right position, that sprocket wouldn't have fitted in there. So the other one that's arrived is the front axle, which I've just got over here, and this is the one with the bearings in it. So to press the bearings in, you've got the bolt, a bearing, then there's a tube inside, a spacer tube to stop it crushing, then there's another bearing and some washers that you pack out the stub axle with. So what I've been doing is assembling it there with the bolt and then tightening the nut down, and that's been pulling the bearings into the axle, like this one here we prepared earlier. So that's a nice bearing on there, and your steering linkage will go onto that, and then all that will mount the other way up onto the spring there with your bag of clamps that turned up off eBay the other day. Right, here's the bearings. What I've done, I've had them in the freezer for the last few hours. And it might just, don't forget your spacer, whatever you do, don't forget your spacer to stop them squashing up. Bearing the other side, get some washers on, so the nut hasn't got so far to go. Yeah, I've had them in the freezer to try and get them to reduce in size and go in a little bit quicker, a bit easier. So we'll see how we get on with this one. Bearings pulling in nice. The top bearings going off on a little bit of an angle. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to get a punch and just straighten that up. So as I mentioned previously, I put the bushes in the freezer to shrink them down a little bit to make them easier to press in. One of them still cocked off a little bit, so I had to use a drift and a hammer just to square it up, continuing to apply pressure with the bolts. And there we can see that's basically one loosely assembled. You can see I know full well how hard this is to do. We've got a piece of bar there that's gusseted in and welded on, great. We've got the axle that's bent there and it's identical, both sides. It's I've made roll cages for race cars before now, and I know how hard it is to get that bend and that bend identically the same, and then to get these angles of these the same, and then to bend and weld up the plates to take the tracks and get everything all the same. And then the axle, stub axles, all welded on square. Spacer to stop the wheel going too close, all turned down, locking nuts, washers, it's all there, you know. It was, it's a Gemini Kart's part, and they're not cheap. You could make one of these yourself for a few quid. You'd be at it weeks and it would be wrong. Or you can buy one, and the quality of service I've received is great. I'm more than happy with this. A little bit stuck at the moment, still waiting on bushes to go through there to attach those to. We've got, I think I've already said, we've got everything sort of set out where it's going to be going, and I've moved these chassis rails just a little bit. That's a sprocket and a disc from Gemini Karts. The motorcycle caliper and master cylinder reservoir came from the bike breakers in Scotland. The rear axle came from Gemini Karts. What else? We got the steel. The steel I got from Metals 4U, metals as in number 4U, and I gave them the dimensions and they cut everything down to the exact size for me, posted it all out, so I just had to jig it up and weld it in place. The front springs came as a complete set with the hangers and the brackets perfectly cut out. I got them off eBay, Southern 5060. The engine plate also came from that same eBay supplier, and again it's just cut out perfectly, no messing around with it. Tack it on, weld it on. The motor came from Tools something or other. I just done a Google search and they were doing the Hyundai the cheapest. I was finding every single day the prices of the engines were going up and down, and it's just look, see who's cheapest on the day and order off them. So yeah, that came basically next day. The torque converter on the side, I've had a little issue with the torque converter where the sprocket teeth are different to the rear sprocket teeth. So I've got a socket with a 420 2 spacing on order to go onto my torque converter to bring that all into line. And as I explained, the issue with the bearing plates on here on those chassis rails. So I'm either going to maybe mount them that way up, weld a piece of box section on top to take the top hole. I'm maybe going to weld a bit of tubing on there to take the top hole, or I'm going to get plates with just 2 holes, one either side. Seem to be a popular way of mounting them. So there's a few options there, you know. It's not plain sailing, but it's not far off it. No big issues. The chain clearance I've got is roughly that much on each side. It's moved slightly because the caliper's pushing the axle across and I've not got the axle bearings in. But the chain clearance is that much with a 72 sprocket. I'm tempted to cut these rails out because they're only tacked and just move them another 1/4 inch each out. So it will be 12.5 inches between rails instead of 12 inches. I'll have a think on that, have a sleep on that, see how we get on. Okay, I've just sort of mocked it up so I can see how it's going. We've got the engine there, out the way. We've got the torque converter on that side, potentially. Sort of line up with the sprocket down there. I'll need a bit of back axle will go through there, the disc brake there, sprocket there. It all seems to sort of line up. We've got a little bit of an overhang, don't really want, with the cylinder head and the carb. So I need to check it will fit in the Volkswagen Transporter van. If it's too long to go in the Volkswagen Transporter van, I'll have to do something. And then on the front, as I've said a few times now, we're still waiting on metal tubing to make the bushes for there. So I've just taped and tie wrapped them up in place. And we've got the front axles going to go on there, mounted on top of the leaf springs with so it's looking pretty good. Got them all sort of lined up, a little bit of an angle on there. It should take these above the chassis rail and a bit close when they turn, so they need to go, tie rods need to go from the top down, and yeah, from the top down. And I need to mount the steering rack up here, which will move the pedals back to here, and tube up. I'm going to buy a cheap go-kart steering rack by the looks of things, and then cut the steering tube, get a bit of pipe and weld the pipe on both ends to extend it. So you can see we're not 2 weeks in, and we're starting to look something like my axle height on the front is just above the chassis rails, and on the rear is in the middle of the chassis rail. So it's going to be slightly nose down on the front if I mount it lower like that. I could mount the front axle underneath the springs. It would probably bring it a little bit closer, but would raise the centre of gravity. So it's just a mock-up, so you can see how we're getting on. And this could all change. Going to be away for a few days, so it's going to come to a halt for a few days, and obviously I'm waiting on wheels, so there's no big rush at the moment. Right, see you next time. If you want to see more of this, give us a thumbs up and subscribe. I'll put it all in a Cyclekart file on my YouTube channel, so you can quickly and easily find the Cyclekart build and keep up to date with it and up to speed with it. Again, if there's anything you see I'm doing wrong, let me know. Let me know of any ideas before I do it, so I can modify it. And we'll see you next time, hopefully.